You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group. Hi, Adrian here. It's episode 304 of the podcast. And today we're talking about mold. And when you're shipping your products internationally in containers, you've already gone through a very long process of developing, testing, and manufacturing the product. And you might not have been thinking about, well, what happens when it's being shipped? Do I have any other risks? And mold is a very real and kind of gross risk. So Kate, who is our supply chain management manager, is joining me today to talk about why this issue occurs and what we can do to reduce the risk of mold. Hi, Kate. Bet you didn't think you were going to be talking about this anytime soon.
Hi, Adrian. Hi, our listeners. I'm happy to be back. But yes, the topic is quite special. I did not expect to be talking about mold. However, I'm happy that this topic is brought up today, as actually mold is something that every importer runs into, even not many think about it in advance. So I think that's great that you brought up this topic today.
Cool. Yeah, I thought maybe this is something that people might not have often thought about. I mean, when you're in the West and you're just buying products, you assume, okay, that's been shipped over, it's probably come in a container, maybe some air freight, but you don't think about, well, okay, it's 6 to 8 weeks maybe on the water. What's going on inside the container? Is everything just absolutely fine? There's no risk, and actually, this is a potential issue. Do you have any examples of like when mold has been a problem that you've experienced?
Yeah, and great. So as you already mentioned, so mold ruins products, mold can damage packaging, can destroy entire shipment, and which can lead to huge financial losses. And mold can hit everything like textile, leather goods, wood products, paperboard packaging, home decor, even sometimes electronics if the packaging gets moldy. But the good news is that it's not really magic. It appears when very specific mistakes happen in supply chain, either at the factory or during packaging or during shipping. So today my goal is to walk you through some simple practical controls that actually work. And also, yeah, as you asked and as I was planning anyway, I'll share some real cases from my own experience where like mold concerns killed actually the deal and why it was completely avoidable. So as usually is best, as I say, is best to learn from other mistakes. So let's start with why actually mold explosions happen, because I guess many of our listeners are wondering when they can run into this issue. Because usually when importers hear mold, they imagine disaster, that arrives from nowhere. But actually, there are like three main things that cause mold problems. So first one is humidity in production. You know that most importers are importing from China, India, Vietnam, and China is usually, in many cases, is south of China, and it's hot, humid climate that when you are in UK or somewhere in US, you might not think about it. When you come here, especially try to come, I live in south of China, try to come here in summer, you will initially understand what I'm talking about. You know it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yes. So this is a huge risk, and that if products are not dried properly, especially textile, wood, laser, paper, as I said, moisture gets trapped inside. And I know it even like when I try to store my clothes when we're changing seasons and I put some leather jackets and I try to put some moisture absorbents to help. It's full of water. Like in 2 days, I have like a whole bucket of water coming from humidity. It's like a huge challenge to keep actually clothing or things that are like sensitive to mold, to keep them safe here on both on personal level and on business level. So even if that's a challenge. So moisture, even if you use like moisture absorbent packaging, cheap cardboard, wooden pallets, some foams, they just soak humidity like a sponge. But if a packaging itself is damp, it creates perfect environment for mold to happen. So that's really like the second one. And then third one is condensation during shipping. So imagine containers get hot during the day and then they get cold during the night and travel across different climates on top. Once it's traveling to you from south of China or Vietnam or India. So the temperature swings caused this container rain, it is called. So it's like condensation that drips down on cartons for weeks inside your container. So if you combine all of those three, so like moisturizer absorbent packaging that was not selected correctly or not good quality, condensation during shipping, and actually humidity in production, this is called mold explosion. So this is where you get it. So that's the reason where it goes. And next, you might be wondering how to actually prevent mold, and this is something that we wrote on in our blog, right, Adrian? Like quality inspection. There is a very useful article with checklist that you can actually refer to. I think Adrian will be kind enough to share the link.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, so this is very useful for you to keep in mind and to have this checklist. But in general, to outline, so there are like few steps that you need to consider. One is factory control. So warehouse and workshop needs to be dry, and humidity needs to be kept below 60% of RH. RH is like relative humidity level. So usually if it's below 60% of relative humidity, usually this is generally it is safe environment. If it's 60 to 70%, then it's a warning zone. If it's above 70%, mold can start growing. And if it's like above 80%, it's a high risk. And I can assure you that during the wet season and also during summer in all of those mentioned, south of China, Vietnam, India, we do have a like 90% humidity at least. So above 80, above 80%, it's generally the case. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't go to South China to visit us at Jillian or our office in.
Please come still.
No, I haven't finished. Do come and visit, but don't go and expect to wear jeans during the summer. You don't want to be doing that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. So basically, please welcome. But what you need to control with your supplier is to make sure they dry the products completely before packaging, and also avoid storing goods too long before shipping, especially if you don't know where they store the goods. But also telling you from my experience, for example, even at the Jillian, we have regular warehouse zone and we have air conditioned warehouse zone for some sensitive like electronic products, batteries. There are special things that you need to keep AC running all the time, and of course it drains energy, so it's much more expensive than normal warehouse. So if you are not paying for warehousing, or if you're paying like regular warehousing fee and your supplier never discussed with you about AC warehouse, be sure that they're not using any AC in the warehouse. So that's a risk. So then you need to think, if you plan on long-term storage, this is something that you need to discuss, how they take care of the goods that are stored inside your warehouse. And also another one that is difficult to control, but you can do it at, for example, we do packaging supervision, that you cannot use wet pallets or like old dump packaging, which some suppliers do, because even if your product is dry, but your pallets are damp during all these weeks of shipment, this is where you will get the mold. So it's important at least to have suppliers send you videos on a like smaller scale. On a bigger scale, you can order packaging loading supervision, and one of the checkpoints will be to make sure that pallets are dry.
Yes,
so
and that's something that we offer at Sofeast. You know, our inspectors can go and check the container loading and that everything's above board.
Exactly. Yes. So this is about factory. Then there is packaging control that we partly mentioned already. So it's important to use desiccants inside boxes. So this kind of moisture absorbers. Try to use better quality cartons, thicker thicker cartons. They're much less likely to get dumped during traveling. Minimize empty air inside cartons. So try to pack it, have your supplier. It's better for you anyway for the shipment cost, but
Yeah.
also for mold reason as well. If you can wrap some products or cartons in a plastic film, that helps. Yeah. Otherwise, depending on a product type, there are also some breathable packaging options available. This is if you want to go more complicated. If it's simple, just try to use plastic wrap. That also helps. So that's about packaging, about logistics. So then, so we have a factory who we assume did everything well during production, during storage. Then we have packaging, which we controlled. So last part of it is shipping, of course. So then you have some logistic controls, which starts from a dry and clean container. So it's worth to mention to your forwarder to make sure they check that. There are also special desiccants for container grade. Basically, they are like long strips that hang on container walls. Many people use that, but if you don't know, you would not think about it. But if you have something related to wood, home decor, leather, textiles, this is something that you should definitely think about. Forwarders know about it, and suppliers also know about it. You need to be mindful of the weather especially during the raining seasons. So if it's right after heavy rains. Yesterday I was walking out of the factory and now we are not in the rain season, but the logic is sometimes not the strongest point here. So in some suppliers. So I was walking yesterday and see a huge amount of boxes outside of one factory, just random factory in Dongguan, just outside. And it was like late evening. So for sure they will be staying there overnight. And there is like no rain in the forecast. But if there is, we never know. More or less, there is no way these boxes would be taken away. It's a huge amount of boxes. Probably they're waiting for a container to come and load in the morning or something. There is no one, some old grandma sitting on the chair watching, but the factory is already closed. So there's no way she can do something with those boxes. So they're just outside there. So this is okay. Now we're in dry season, maybe okay, but you never know. So that's one of the concerns. And then, so this is where packaging and loading supervision also will be very handful in place. Yes, and then, so plastic pallets usually perform better than wooden, again, on this. So can use them if possible. And then, and already what I said, so place some desiccants higher in the container, because not lower, but higher, because actually moist air rises, right? So it needs to be on top of container walls to get it efficiently. So that's about like simple control things, checklist to have in mind. Please also check our information on qualityinspection.org to get more insights on that. But that's are the main things that come into my head right now. So let's move to some real story from my experience that I wanted to share today. So when I was preparing for today's podcast, I remembered that I had a story from maybe a few months before, I think, maybe in summer, something end of summer, with one of our US customer actually, who, because of tariff fluctuation, so we have two topics mixed here, he decided to move to India to try to develop some suppliers in India to diversify his supply chain. So he went to some trade fairs in India. He found some suppliers, and so he was preparing to get his order, and he's doing home decor. So he's actually very knowledgeable of this issue, because he's dealing with home decor products. So this kind of things, he had it in his mind. He's doing business for more than 10 years. So that's fine. So he decided to do, and it's like he has wooden trays, he has textiles, he had some mixed material items. So what people do, he ordered samples from supplier, because he met them at some trade fair, everything is perfect, price is good, supplier looks good, quality is good. Okay, so he came back to the US to order some initial samples, and they arrived feeling slightly down, actually. So he became worried and did some simple humidity check. I don't know which one exactly it was, but most buyers do like basic moisture content test. You can do like wood moisture, use wood moisture meter, you can do humidity chamber reading, or like simply humidity probe inside the product. But he did that, and he saw that his humidity is over 80% inside inside a sealed sample box. So that's, as I mentioned before, that's like guaranteed mold risk, more or less. So above 70%, it can grow. Above 80%, you're guaranteed you'll have mold. 60 to 70%, you're at risk. Below 60, you're okay, as we mentioned. So his concern was absolutely valid. Okay, but I mean, he did not even have to do the test because things arrived damp. So that's clear that we have a problem there. So what happened next? We had a call actually with him. And then, so what he showed these test results to Indian supplier and basically shared his concerns. He said that he needs some proofs of moisture control. He needs some humidity testing inside the container before shipping. Of course, proper drying of the goods before loading. And then Indian supplier said that, no, don't worry, we will put a lot of these moisture absorbers like desiccants in the container, so it will be fine. But he refused to perform any tests. Basically, he said, yeah, it was a long rain season in India, so that affected, but now it's getting better. And he just said that he sent him a WhatsApp message that, don't worry, I personally assure you that everything will be fine. You have my personal guarantee.
Okay.
So then this guy called me and he was like, Kate, what does this mean? Like personal guarantee? I don't know, but don't go for it. So basically, he didn't offer any corrective actions. Okay, he proposed to use some desiccants, but even he cross-checked because he has also a supplier in China who he's ordering for a long time, and they're like in a close relationship. And he showed some desiccants that Indian supplier was about to use, and Chinese supplier was like, wow, but that's like not enough. So Chinese suppliers were much more knowledgeable on this part. But yeah, there was like no new packaging, no container check. So basically just personal assurance. So this at the end, so the buyer decided that it's not worth it, and even he paid the deposit. He decided to cancel the entire order because the risk was just not worth it. It's a lot of time. He is selling on Amazon, and the main point was that he was shipping directly to Amazon, so he was also afraid that he cannot really check himself when things arrive. It will arrive to Amazon. Then if have problems, we'll have he need to refund the customers. He'll get bad reviews, so he'll get a lot of problems, and this is not something. So he was more open to lose the deposit than to risk this order, which I think is he's right in this. So this is like I think a perfect example that you need really like clear testing requirements. You need written procedures, and you need to make sure that your suppliers are taking humidity control seriously. It can cause problems.
Can I ask about desiccants? Right, they're, as a consumer, you probably almost barely notice them. Usually, they're a small little sort of paper bag full of some sort of beads, almost crystals, something like that, inside the product. Right, that's on the product level. But if we're talking about larger scale desiccants inside the container, are they also like big bags within the the
sort of
the crate?
yes, sort of. So you like when you're shipping, especially home decor stuff or all this kind of that is subject to mold, you need to put desiccants inside the cartons, definitely. And those are just basically the ones the same as you find in your bags, but on bigger ones. There are like special ones for cartons, but also inside the container. Those are just, they're the same desiccants, but they're like long stripe that you stick to container walls on the upper part of container walls to make sure because
what sort of cost are we looking at for this, roughly?
It's not expensive. I think for container is maybe within $50 for the whole container stuff.
Okay, so it's too cheap not to overlook.
It's too cheap not to overlook, and in many cases, actually, supplier even can take care of it. If you have good relationship and they care about what they're doing, in many cases supplier can take care of that, especially if they want to sell. So it's important. I think that's one of the important issues. But to give you like a simple sort of checklist, so you need to really put desiccants in every carton. You need to try to use desiccants for a container. It's better to use. We have seen a lot of problems with cartons, so it's important. There are standards for cartons. I think we also covered it in one of the articles. And export cartons are a bit different from internal cartons that are used just like to ship e-commerce inside the country. So those are like, I think, 5-layered PL wide. Just I hope I don't say nonsense, but I think it's like 5-layer PLYs. It is export standard. It's thicker, and so it's much better, because if it's a thin carton and it's a little bit damp, it might break. It might cause damage to the product, and it's of course subject to mold, especially if it was a bit wet and it took all the moisture inside. Then it went into container, and then it has all these nice weeks of being inside in a humid, hot environment, and cold and everything. So then you might have a problem. So better quality cartons are good. Usually, if you don't need to go to much details, but export cartons is a word that most of suppliers would know. And then it's best to also use a plastic film for if it's a long trip for your cartons to put on top of the carton to seal. That protects cartons better. And then for the factory, ask supplier to keep your to keep humidity level below 60%. As we discussed, try to ask them how they control that, and ensure that they dry products thoroughly before the shipment. They can show you some videos how they do that. Ask those questions. Don't be shy to do that. And keep in mind that the longer you store the products, the more risks you're running into. So try to avoid storing finished products for too long. Yeah, and then wooden pallets is also a bit risky. So if you can use plastic pallets, I think it depends on weight you're planning to put on pallets. But if it's possible, then plastic is better in terms of mold than wooden pallets. And then so this is about your supplier. And then for container, make sure you have some videos of the container before loading, or make sure you hire a professional to supervise loading to make sure that container is dry. Hang container desiccants. Ask your supplier or talk to your forwarder. And on the top, they know. Like I never saw that anyone doesn't know. So just make sure they will do it for you. If it's rainy, but this is where you need to get videos from your supplier about the loading or hire a professional to supervise, because raining season is long. People still ship, people still load. And I don't know if it's very effective for you to check the weather forecast on the day of loading, but yes, it might not be the most efficient way. And good suppliers, they have the way to get them truck inside their factories. They have a special loading position that is not affected by rain. But at the same time, a story from yesterday, I see a lot of cartons waiting for loading just left outside of the factories. So, make sure this is kept in mind. Yeah, and then you can always request humidity reading before sealing the container if you have any doubts here. That's also not very difficult to perform. So that would be my simple checklist to give you, and that you can give to your suppliers respectively.
Yeah, a lot to think about there, and kind of good to warn, so you can speak to suppliers, listeners who are listening right now, and make sure that humidity isn't going to be a problem. I have one final question, if I may. Time is one of the factors that can cause mold. If some of the other risk factors are in place, such as there's dampness, the packaging's not right, or the packaging's already got damp, then it's sitting in a container for 5, 6, 8 weeks, something like that. Is it still such a problem with air freight?
Yeah, exactly. No, you need some time, and usually mold is a bigger problem for sea shipment. The more problems that you may have with air freights is that if you had to dump cartons, they will break at some point. You might receive some damaged cartons and damaged products eventually, which is also the risk. But you are less subject to mold problem. It's more about container because it's a closed environment. It's hot and humid, and then you have condensate when it travels to a colder environment. So it's like a perfect place for mold to grow, and it has a lot of time, plenty of time to do that. So that's a bigger concern for sea shipments. For air shipment, you just need to ensure that you're not shipping wet products and wet cartons just because it can be broken. For mold, normally is not enough time during shipping. But remember that you still have risks that you can get mold during storage at the factory or during production. So that's still a risk.
Yeah, so you need to be on top of the factory to make sure that your products are in a climate-controlled storage if needed, and so that means people importing leather or anything made of wood and things like that specifically, but it really could be anything, especially when it's a humid environment like South China, Vietnam, India, as you've said.
It can affect electronics as well.
Yeah.
On them,
So, yep, absolutely. So we got to watch that. If you've got any questions about packaging, shipment, storage, logistics, also let us know. Kate can help you. And
yes. Yes. So let us know. If you're interested in any particular topic for us to cover, we would be happy to do that. And in relation to mold problem, if you put a few inexpensive, as we said, and simple measures in place, importers, you can avoid basically ruined shipments, your unhappy customers at the end, especially if you're shipping to Amazon like my customer did. That you cannot really control it by yourself what you receive, which a lot of importers do, and then you don't have thousands of dollars in loss and bad reviews and ruined if not businesses, then at least listings. So this is to keep in mind. And if you need any support from our side to control, to supervise, to talk to your supplier, to make sure everything is in place, you know where to find us.
Absolutely. You mentioned I'll have some links to relevant articles here. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.